welcome everyone to day two. Fantastic having you here. I'm pleased to be here today talking a little about AI and governance and kind of some developments. I feel like every time we talk, AI moves so fast. There's just so many things that we can discuss, right? And so today I'll be kind of focusing on agentic AI and what does that mean for governance, right? Last year we focused a lot on generative AI, and I'm here to tell you that it has gone way beyond that, and we're going to have a very engaging conversation as to where we are now and what the future looks like. But for you as leaders, business leaders, private sector leaders, how do you kind of reshape your internal operation to ensure that you can deliver in what you need to do? So, let me just kind of take you through. At the end, we will have, a few question and answers. I'm usually in my studio. I'm in my office now. And definitely, I won't be writing on the board, but definitely we'll be going through a presentation, right? So the aim of our discussion is going to be agentic AI and governance. I'm pleased to share, Kamala, with your audience that we've just been named Time Magazine Top EdTech Company of 2025. We got that last week, and so we're deeply proud about that. Now, let's start by kind of understanding when we say agentic AI, what it is, how is it different from generative AI? We'll get into that, and then we will kind of go into some of the implications of it. So the way I want you to think about agentic AI is very simple, right? What you're perhaps used to is, entering what I call a prompt, and the AI kind of responds to you. And the last time I would have shared with you that all that is really matrix algebra, right? You enter something, it takes that data, transform it, and give you an output, and it does it in such a way that it appears intelligent. But really what it is doing is predicting the next text that shows up. Well, it has gotten more powerful than that. Just imagine now, you, the prompter, was prompting this AI to do something. So let's say find me hotels in Kingston or Trinidad, and it goes ahead and it finds it, or create a picture for me. That's what you're used to doing, and that's what generative AI is. When it comes on to agentic AI, you're more looking at, instead of you prompting it, another AI is prompting it. So can you imagine when that picture comes back, you say, no, I don't like that, make a change here or there. Well, that simple process of having the AI, correcting the other AI is what we call an agentic operation, right? So multiple AIs kind of working together to make this work. So in terms of our definition, what we'd like to look at is AI, agentic AI, and how they kind of operate. Now, Bill Gates says that today's software is still pretty dumb, right? But believes AI would utterly change how we live and change our lives. And what does that really mean? Now, in terms of generative AI context, agents are what we call representatives of autonomous agent that can execute complex tasks, right? Make a sale, plan a trip, book a flight, book a contractor to do a house job, order pizza on your behalf, right? Now, what do we mean by complex, and how is it different than what we're used to? Well, it turns out that AI has some limitations, right? So when you enter a prompt and it gives you a response, if you realize if you do too much of that, the context becomes so big and then it starts losing value, right? And so over time, it kind of loses value, and then the responses are not as great. So here comes agentic AI, where, each of those requests become small requests to the AI. So it's not this big chunk of information, but it's these small requests. And that's why it is able to kind of achieve these complex tasks. But we'll get into that and you'll see what that looks like. But suffice it is to say that I can now order a pizza by sending the AI to do it for me. I can book a trip by sending the AI to do it for me, etc., etc. I could even get a contractor to come to my house by getting the AI to do it for me. Now, in terms of in the news, you're seeing it everywhere, right? Agentic AI. Microsoft pitches AI agents that can perform tasks at their own conference. Why AI agents are the next frontier of generative AI. NVIDIA, your digital co-worker, that should scare you, right? What do we mean by your, your digital co-worker, right? Let's talk about that. And Salesforce is saying agent force is here. So there's no longer Salesforce, a CRM, they have an agent force. And what they're putting out is this ability to create AI sales agents, right? And what does that mean, and how does that affect things, right? AI momentum won't stop in 2025. And then finally, ServiceNow saying to unlock 24/7 productivity at scale, agents for IT, customer service, procurement, HR, software development, and so on. So here we are, we're talking, and these agents that are very simple things that kind of AI talking with each other have so many kind of implications and use cases, right? And this is kind of what the news is kind of looking at. So, you know, agents go beyond this reactive AI scenario that we spoke about, which simply responds to a prompt, as I said, right? But it actively pursues a goal by itself, or you can have a human in the loop. Now, we're going to talk about that human in the loop because it's important from a governance standpoint. But, you know, it actively pursues these goals and objectives, adapting its action based on feedback and learning from experiences, right? And you know, what we want to look at is the proactiveness and the adaptiveness, right? Instead of passively waiting for instructions from you, the human, agentic AI systems are proactive and they're adaptive. They can anticipate a need, generate solution, and autonomously make decisions within defined parameters. Now, you know, there's some high level characteristics that I just kind of want to set the foundation for. Obviously, goal oriented. I mean, you set a goal, I want to book a flight, it goes ahead and it books the flight for you. They work independently of you, right? So they are autonomous, making decisions and taking actions without constant human intervention. Just to give you guys some perspective, the other day I had to change a flight for my team members who were traveling to the Bahamas, and you know, we didn't have the time to really sit down and find the best suited flights and so on. And we use GPT operator, which I would have showed the last time, to actually rebook all of those itineraries. And all I needed to do was to pay. And this was an agent at work where it just kind of works by itself, browses the internet, finds the appropriate tickets, the flights, all of those things, and coordinates within itself. It took about 30 minutes to do it. But the point is that it was not a human and it got it done. It also self-learns, right? So it continuously learns and improves its performance based on data and feedback. And then contextual awareness. They can understand and adapt changes to changing context and making decisions based on real-time information. And why is context awareness important is simply because when we talk about a company and your enterprise, that data that exists within your company now provides context where it can get that information when it needs it, right? Not when you provide it, but when it determined that it needs it. So, you know, that goal that it has that I need to achieve, let's say I need to book some flights, I now need passport information. Where does it exist? Okay, it exists in this document. I go and find it, I get it, and then I use that to actually book the flight. So that's what it means by contextual awareness. Now, there are several benefits of this before I start telling you the bad news, right? Uh, increased efficiency. I mean, if we have these things can work on its own, you know, 30 minutes booking a flight for me, it's super efficient. I can now multitask and do the things that I really like while it does that for me. So these automated tasks can run on their own. These processes runs on their own, freeing up me, the CEO, to do the things I really like to do. Enhanced productivity is linked there, making intelligent decisions and making proactive actions. AI agents can boost productivity across industries. Improve decision making. This is important again. For me personally, I've always had kind of like a technical analyst by my side. One of my recent analysts moved to, you know, got his CFA, he kind of moved to a bigger position in another company. And so I was left without one. And then AI came about. And so now I have created an agent that does any research or analysis for me. So any market research analysis for me, I just kind of tells it what I want and it goes out and do the research for me and comes back with that, right? So again, you know, making informed decision as a CEO, relying on agents to get that data and still being human who looks at that data and to see kind of where it makes sense and not. And then personalized experience, right? We can tailor these experiences to individual needs and preferences, leading to customer satisfaction. Now, in terms of inaction, it's going to be everywhere. Manufacturing, healthcare, finance, education. Obviously, a lot of what we do now are in education, but if you think about a manufacturing processes or even in finance, think about a treasury department that, you know, engages in the buying and selling of currency, right? We can have an agent making the deal with a human or another agent, and then that deal now we can essentially book that in our software using another agent. So these are obviously use cases. Now, in terms of looking at the patterns, right? And from the patterns, you will see what's wrong. and where are the kind of governance issues, right? The first thing that, when you talk about AI agents in terms of how they are designed and how we certainly design them is that, the first thing is to kind of look at the goal. What's the goal? And the goal is to kind of, what am I trying to accomplish? So let's say I need to book a ticket. Then, okay, I need to go to our website. I need to find available tickets. I need to apply a few filters and to understand essentially what flights are available. The goal determines the plan of action, right? So that plan of action is kind of broken down into smaller steps. We can train the AI agents through rewards and penalties, so we can kind of reward certain actions and kind of de-incentivize certain actions as well. Organizing the task and action into multi-steps. So I will do this first, second, third, and so on. And then you have something called multi-agent coordination. And this is important in that, agents work very well when they're actually, focused on a specific task or a specific goal. But let's say you have many goals that you want to accomplish, right? You can have kind of multiple agents working together. So, let's say again in the travel agent scenario, I want to book you a full vacation. So there's an agent who is really good at booking flights. There's one who's really good at booking hotel vacations. And there's another one that is perhaps good at, let's say, booking car rentals, right? But they're all kind of working together. And then you have the super agent, by the way, so now I need a master agent. And this master agent is kind of coordinating. It says that, okay, book this flight, book this car, and book this hotel, right? And then the one that's booking the hotel comes back and says, well, I couldn't find an hotel in these dates. And the master agent says, okay, let me check on that for you, and goes. And all of them are working autonomously, right? Now, the question is that what could possibly go wrong, right, with a scenario like that? And so in order to answer that question, right, we ourselves at One-on-One, our backbone is Zoho, which is an application like Microsoft and Google, and we use it well. And so recently I reached out to the CEO of Zoho and I said, look, I have a problem. I just lost my executive assistant and she's gone to another company now, and I want to build out an HR agent, but I also wanted to do executive assistant work, read my emails, plan my meetings, and things like that, right? And I said to him that, boy, I could do this myself, but do you have anything planned? And he sent me a link to a video, and I'm just going to play the video for you, and then we kind of talk about it, right? Very good.
CI agents. Always on, never wrong. Sounds slick? Nope, just mission-ready AI agents. These agents connect all of your data on your CRM, website, emails, chats, support ticket, that dusty old spreadsheet you forgot about, and even that one folder. Basically, everything except your house plans, but we're working on that. These agents answer fast. Like, blink and you'll miss it fast. Want to nurture leads? Resolve tickets, track inventory, or even planning to hire a personal travel assistant? No problem. Zia Agents books your tickets, arranges a cab, checks for weather delays, and rebooks your flight if needed. It actively monitors changes and takes action without waiting for your input. Zia Agents can also be your virtual HR agent, smart manufacturing agent, sales SDR agent, and much more. Just pick your perfect fit from the marketplace, or create your own in the Agent Studio, or simply ask Zia. No digging through endless tabs. No more, I'll get back to you on that. Just instant, accurate resolutions. It learns, adapts, and grows with your business. It's like hiring the world's best specialist without the HR paperwork. Basically, your employee of the month every month. Big business, small business, just you and your cat running an empire? Zia Agents fit right in. Faster solutions, happier customers. Zia Agents, your teams just got an upgrade.
So, when I saw this, right, the question I kind of asked myself and my team is what could possibly go wrong, right? You see, in a private case, when we're talking about employees, what we're seeing now is the ability to employ a digital employee who is not a human. And this digital employee has access to all your enterprise data and can complete a job description without your involvement. And so you can potentially achieve 24-hour work. You can, make decisions, learn and adapt, interact with clients and systems in real time. This employee will never forget. They don't ask, they don't hesitate, and it's 24/7. This is a nightmare for capitalists, right? Because everyone is going to want a digital employee. And the question becomes, in a world of digital employees, how do we govern? How do we set up ourselves to ensure that we can hold these things accountable? How do we ensure that there remains a human in the loop? And so, while I was very excited by these opportunities that exist and what Zoe is coming with and what they're building, in my mind, I started asking myself this question. And this is kind of why this kind of forum is so important. And we'll talk about that in a few questions. Now, in terms of understanding what is happening with that digital employee, just to kind of paint the picture a little. Now, you're perhaps used to interacting with AI, process automation. You have some sort of workflow. We have data, and then that automated script is run, for example. So large private enterprises, they are experiencing kind of running end of day scripts that probably move data from one system to another. Then you have what's called supervised AI, where you have some sort of training data set, you have some sort of machine learning model on top of that, and then it can do some prediction and so on. I mean, many of us don't do this. And then we have generative AI. You're used to this, right? Enter a prompt, use the LLM, and then it gives you a text, an image, a video. That's okay. You have seen this on Google. With agentic AI, you kind of start with that goal, and that goal becomes that employee's job description. It makes a plan in terms of executing each of those jobs, right? And that plan needs data. That data now is that how do we expose it to the data that you have in your system? It needs memory. It needs to remember what exists and need to know where to find things that exist. So for example, let's say you're a bank. Employees' banking records are here. These are the files. We need to be able to tell it that this is where you go to find things if you need it. That's how agentic systems work. And then what it does after it kind of does an action, let's say booking a flight, it reflects on what it has done and it self-reflects. And really, this is another AI asking it, have you done a good job? In the same way, a micromanager comes and says, have you done a good job? And it reflects and says, no, I've not. Let me try that again. And it goes and it works and it works and it does it. And then it gives you a response or an outcome. So this is how the agentic kind of system works. Now, if you look at that task, right? That task or that goal, as I mentioned, is broken down into many tasks. You're going to hear something called chain of thought reasoning. This is something that persons kind of speak about in terms of it thinks for itself. So the goal is broken down into tasks. It needs memory, long-term and short-term. Lack of memory will give bad results. The reflection, we spoke about that, self-reflection, adaptive error correctness, it does that on its own, right? One of the things that one-on-one we're doing now is that historically we have built videos and spent millions of dollars building learning videos. And now what we do is to have the AI create the videos, and then our quality assurance AI reviews the AI who created the video, right? And so that process is being automated fully. And just finally, before I go into the governance context, let's just look at a simple use case in terms of, let's say, an email marketing campaign. Let's say the user queries to generate a tailored email to receive, let's say, $100,000 US in sales in 1 month. And the applicable products and their performance metrics are available at some URL. Connect to CRM system for customer names, email addresses and demographic details. So that's all we give to it. We also ensure that it knows where to find this data. So we tell it, okay, this is where the CRM exists and so on. The first thing it does is to essentially add the tasks, such as analyze the products and performance available at X. So this is in the planning phase, right? So it kind of reasons out what it needs to do. Launch and monitor the email campaign. Once it does that, it comes back, find alternative products with better performance metrics to include in the email campaign, utilize customer data to personalize the campaign with customer names and so on. And it kind of does this on its own, running an entire campaign. And so that's how an email campaign would, for example, work agentically. Now, obviously, there are challenges with this, right? Ethical consideration, bias is one, accountability and responsible development. Meaning, if two agents are working together, who do you hold accountable if something goes wrong, right? When you go to the bank and the teller, let's say, has a rounding error in booking the amount you've deposited, and that teller is no longer a human that you could say is this person, who do you hold accountable in that context, right? There are also bias implications involved. And where bias comes in is that all AI systems are effectively trained on data. And that data is based on what it has been exposed to on the World Wide Web. You know it, right? Bias comes in if that training data is not sufficient to cover the context that you are experiencing. So when we use these large systems from the United States and China and so on, there's an issue with DeepSeek that we demonstrated the last time. If you asked it something about the communist regime, it would not answer. And that's the bias that it has been trained on, not to answer those sort of questions, right? And so we have to look out for that from an ethical perspective, even within agents. Because remember, agents are simply using AI and LLMs to accomplish its goal. Data, privacy, and security, very important. How do we safeguard sensitive data and prevent misuse? So remember, the agent will always go for what it needs, and it needs access to it. Now, what happens when it goes rogue? What happens when there's an injection of, let's say, prompts where someone from the outside kind of gets something in to tell it to do something it should not do? For example, remove money from everybody who has not withdrawn money from their bank account in the last 5 years. Remove it and put it into this bank account, right? The agent, because it has access, it can do that without the proper permissions. Understanding how AI systems make decisions is also important for us as managers, right? Because that can help us to understand exactly, how to guide them and so on. So for example, a big thing that I stress is traceability. One of the things that we do in all our implementation is that we actually trace and observe a sample of cases where the agent is going through and making decisions. And we're seeing exactly what it is doing, what it is thinking, what's the chain of thought reasoning, and then we're using that to change the way we direct it, right? So that's important. So you must be able to trace what it's doing. And finally, integration and compatibility, seamless integrating AI systems with existing infrastructure. Now, this is a big deal. A lot of persons are very protective of their data. I'm here to share with you that there are new protocols that exist now where the AI and the agents are not exposed to the data itself, but they are exposed to a protocol or a set of standards that dictates how do you ask a question and how do you give a response. So all I'm saying is, for example, when I go on Expedia as an agent is, I want a ticket to New York, and Expedia responds that here are some flights that goes there, as opposed to getting access to the entire database of Expedia. Now, in terms of some principles to ensure that we have trustworthy AI in an agentic model, we have to think about, it being humane. And what this means is that I hope you guys are seeing this, but evaluate if the use of AI serves humanity or could cause more harm than good for society, right? Now, I've always said to my team that this is something that we rely on from the bigger guys because we don't have the time to do this. So we hope the systems we're using are sufficiently trained up so that it doesn't try to, rid humans of the world, an existential crisis, as we all say. Seek permission from individuals, business partners, or third parties to use their data for AI under development. This is important. So as you're building out these agentic systems and so on, a lot of persons, for example, wants data and they want it fast. So they go out and they try to get it. You can literally tell an agent to go and scrape the data off a website, and the agent will go and do it. But it's always a good idea to seek permission, because if they find out that you're doing that, you're in trouble. Inform any individual who might be affected by the development of AI in language understandable to them. So even within your organization, I have had to tell my team, this personal assistant I'm creating, why am I doing it and how they will interact with it, right? Frankly speaking, I could have done it in a way that was very hard to detect, because I could make it so that when you call it, it sounds like a human on the call. But I thought that was very important so they understand that they were dealing with an AI and not a human. Accessibility, document the decisions the AI make regarding any individuals whose data was used and make the information available. Very important. Agency, set up and communicate appeals program for any individuals who feels algorithm recommendations or source data about them might be incorrect. Explain the AI's decision and sources in plain words. We spoke about privacy and security, fair and quality data. This is important as well. Declare, train, and communicate the people responsible for fixing the AI system if it is malfunction. Again, these things can go rogue when you have agentic systems and you want to be able to intervene. It must be traceable. Set up monitoring tool processes and employees to communicate which part of an AI system went wrong and why it happened, and ensure that we can incorporate feedback. It's always kind of improving. So provide ways for users affected, for users affected people and experts to offer and input AI systems ongoing learning. So for example, as a part of my board meetings currently, one of the things that we have to do is to kind of give an update as to how this is progressing and ensure that my board can see exactly what kind of feedback we're getting and what are the risks so that they can actively monitoring it. It should be governed and rectifiable. So implement models, model drift and data drift monitoring tools and processes, as well as designated people to detect the AI system fails or if it becomes unsafe or biased or corrupt. And again, that goes back to the feedback item. So these are kind of some high level things in terms of what I call the trustworthy AI, the 12 principles that you need to ensure as you adopt these things. Now, finally, in terms of looking at a trustworthy framework, in terms of 3 steps, we talk about the design, we're talking about the data that it needs and the data that you give to it, how it makes decision, that's the algorithm, and the deployment and governance. We've spoken about the design, the data that it needs, and the data policies, the access rules, not all data it needs to access, the algorithm, how it makes decisions, and so on, that is important. But where I want to lock into is kind of the deployment and governance, right? And for us, what that means is that, ensuring that we properly test the application once it's been deployed. I've always recommended test internally before you do externally. Do not release this to your clients before your employees are using this for their processes. So for example, we have internally at One-on-One built an agentic system that can build videos on its own. And these are learning videos for students. But the first thing we did was to ensure that our teachers can use it to generate learning videos and they can review it before giving it to their students, right? And so for us, that's a quality assurance mechanism. Now, once we're comfortable that it's doing that at a good clip, then we can release it to now other teachers who are not employees of One-on-One to use it to make learning videos for their students. Manage, monitor, and mitigate for model drift, data drift, hacking, or data breaches from third parties. I don't know if you heard the news, but recently Claude reported that one of their models literally told them that they were not going to do something that they asked them to do. Like it was very explicit, right? This was under extreme testing, but the AIs can drift, the models can drift, and they can start to behave as if they're really fully functioning human beings, right? So you want to kind of monitor that. Prepare incident response. Should the AI go awry? That's very important. In the same way, if you have a data security or a cybersecurity incident and your platform goes down, ensure that you have a clear response if this goes down. What's the fallback? What happens if that happens? How do we get the human in the loop? Prepare your workforce, right? So policies are important, but your workforce is also important. Train them on how to use it. A lot of persons are still a little skeptical. So that's important, and that needs to go hand in hand with change management and employee communication and skills update. Very important, right? So yes, implementing it is great and companies will be doing it, but these are some of the things that we need to ensure that we do very well as we're actually deploying AI agents. Just to end by saying, before I take some questions, there are websites that you can go to kind of see, which AIs are saved and which one has, good kind of things in place. And here there's a link called Hugging Face Large Language Model Safety Leaderboard. You click on that link and it kind of shows you where the AI models rank and where they rank in terms of toxicity, stereotyping, all of these things, where they rank, right? So you see here, for example, Vertex AI is ranked a little higher than OpenAI, and then Llama seems to have a high non-stereotype score. So you can actually see where they rank in terms of privacy and so on. For example, I want to choose this one with 70 points, right? Which is GPT 3.5, right? Of course, they have updated this in 4.0, so it has a score of about 89. So, and then you got ethics and obviously, on ethics, we have 40 here for Llama. So you kind of just have to weigh up the different things and see what works for you. I'll end by just saying this, Kamala and team, that, for us, it's been a journey in implementing AI agents at One-on-One. We're still kind of working out how do we govern AI agents and ensure that we govern them very well. And obviously, it's been a learning experience for us. But what we believe is that if we follow some core principles and ensure, for example, that we stay abreast of the new developments that are happening. We stay on the cutting edge of that. We continue with those board discussions and we get to people who have the answers. We will be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it.
Not only did I enjoy it, Ricardo, I don't even know where to start. I'm so happy that we had the opening segment on Sunday that introduced us to this whole notion of agentic AI. And so from our opening keynote, because it prepared me for what you shared today, because this went to the moon and the stars.
Thank you.
Okay. So I know we have some comments in the chat, really excellent presentation. So I'm glad that everyone else also found that this was useful. So let me just start with some of my questions, but let me let persons know as well. If you have a question, raise your hand one time so we can allow you to come into the room, to unmute and ask your question, okay? Ricardo, I am really appreciative of all these advances. And I'm so glad that you've been able to demonstrate it to us and how you have used it and all that. But for me, there are some very core issues that we need to address. One of the things is how much trust you have to have in these systems, that they were designed in the first place to work in the right way. Because you made that point in your presentation that at that point, when you ensure that it's doing right by humans, you have to trust the bigger guys that in their design of these systems, it allows us to use it with a certain amount of confidence that it's meant to do well to us.
Right.
You also made a very important observation as well. Let me see, I wrote it down and it was something like this whole, like for instance, you no longer will have a sales force, you will have an AI agent force.
Yeah.
Right. And so this digital co-worker, you made the point that this is really a nightmare for capitalism.
Yeah.
Tell us.
No, I mean, that's a big point because I can tell you that, from our standpoint, when you're a private company, you're trying to maximize profit, right? And you're trying to keep costs low. So outside of the obvious implication of how will this impact the workforce and at the high level of employees and so on that you have on staff, companies will start to find ways to cut costs by employing AI agents. And so what we are expecting is once persons, especially when it becomes easier, because now it's a little black box, right? But once, as Zoho is now saying, on their website, it literally says, Kamala, employ an agent. No, it did not say install. It did not say, this is the screen. It says here, meet your favorite digital employee, employ an agent. No. The intention, therefore, is to have a bunch of employees, which are effectively agents that you can hire and you can give them a job description and they can do a specific task. Now, this is important because now if you have agents that can do a specific task, such as let's say a sales agent and so on, we now have to think about how do we manage those sales agents. So your job as a supervisor in the future is not to manage humans, but is to manage a bunch of agents running around, doing their own thing, working 24 hours, never get tired, right? And how do you kind of save yourself from that impulse of causing them just to work nonstop and just kind of giving you the positives? You have to keep an eye on monitoring them, ensuring that what they're doing is the right thing, right? And I give the example, for example, Kamala, that let's say you have two agents working together and one is a sales agent, but one is in compliance, right? And one is a compliance agent. So the compliance agent is trying to safeguard the company from any risk, legal risk, and so on. And the sales agent is trying to make as much money as possible, right? And what happens is that the sales agent is going, but there's a particular deal, and based on the background of that company you're trying to do a deal with, they're in some shady business, okay? So compliance has a problem with that. But the sales guy wants it to happen, the sales agent, right? So what that creates is a deadlock, an agentic deadlock. And they can't resolve it. And they will be there for hours, can't resolve it. That's number one. Number two, the sales agent may overpower the compliance agent, rendering them effectively redundant. Essentially, their word doesn't matter. And then what could even happen, which is even worse, is that these agents may collude together, where the sales agent may convince the compliance agent that, listen, we need to make more money, for example, for this company, therefore we should take this route. And the compliance agent says, okay. So we need to actively monitor, trace how it is thinking and how it is perceiving things, giving it the context that it needs. And as employers and leaders, these are the things that we need to put in place for the future. But it's very dangerous, but also a lot of opportunities.
So what you have described to me is what happens with humans as well, where sometimes you have a very charismatic sales agent who is able to persuade the compliance officers that, you can let this one go for now because it's for the profits for the company, which is so important for all of us. And then what happens is once the financial reports seem healthy, there's much less scrutiny, because there is a hope that it will never be something that will come to light. And now you're saying multiply that by 10 times more, because of course these agents are working 24 hours and they're scoring, and it could be anywhere.
Yeah, the scale. Every company within the Caribbean and globally, Kamla, will now have the ability to employ an unlimited workforce. Your cost limitation is really the amount of compute. And an agent to process one task takes a very big fraction of, or a very small fraction of the cost of an employee. And so therefore, a company is going to pursue profits, a company is going to pursue efficiency. And in doing that, I'm saying they may be blinded to all the risks that it involves. And that's really scary to me. And then, Kamala, we have to also think, right? If these agents are kind of working and so on, data security now becomes a little different, right? No, it's not a human leaving their computer open that you can go in and do something, but can I get to that agent and influence that agent? Can I do what's called prompt injection, right? And cause that agent to go rogue. And so instead of depositing the money into the bank account when we collect it, deposit into my account. So because of this that is coming, we now have to realign from board level, executive level, to ensure that we can manage agents.
And I can actually see the script now where there is some bad actor who is scripting this bad agent that is going to have that task of going out and finding these vulnerabilities in companies so that they can penetrate.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Okay.
that's the risk.
Right. Now, there are two areas, two extreme ends of the stick I want to ask you about, Ricardo, because I'm not seeing any hands up from our participants. Because you are in the education sector, you are looking to help prepare persons. This was one of the major concerns raised over the last 2 days in terms of preparation of employees and the next generation for this environment that we are in. The pace of change that's happening at the same time, though, how is that working out? Because you are in the sector doing this training right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, what we're seeing is that, it is moving, but not moving as fast, right? What we find is that a lot of persons are still sufficiently kind of blown away by what the AI is capable of. There are some doubters there as well. I remember a few weeks ago, I called a colleague of mine in the IT space, and I told them that, listen, this new thing has just come out and it's going to really change the way we write code. And he says to me, it still has issues because what he was doing is using 1 year ago a test that he did that failed, not realizing that AI is improving every day. Anyhow, he tried it and so on, and his life has been changed, and he has done an article to say basically this is the best thing ever. But the point is that it's moving very fast, Kamla. Every day, today we're talking, there's a new thing that just dropped. And so these things are happening every day. And because of that, the question is, how do we upskill our workforce to stay on top of it, right? My advice is very simple. Don't take it all in, right? Some of it we ignore. And kind of, perhaps in 30 days cycle, kind of look back as leaders and say, what has happened in the last 30 days in AI? and ensure that we manage how we push that to our team members. So what has happened is that because it's coming to them so fast, they kind of resist, right? Because the minute they learn this one, there's something else, right? Another thing that I've found is that persons are struggling to rethink how they redo their own processes in the world of AI. And for example, my head of finance, who does our financial reports, we're a publicly listed company, so we have to publish these reports, right? We've had to kind of rethink our process from the ground up to see how do we kind of put together a report that we can kind of publish that report. And that requires both training on the use of system, but also a core understanding how to build process, right? On the last governance meeting that we had, we spoke about, AI is great, but it doesn't prevent or it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of actually thinking through a proper process and have the AI to help to implement it. So those are the two kind of big things and the trends that we're seeing. Kamala, I think it'll change. I think people will see the beauty of this and kind of run with it. I think there's still a fear in large enterprises about the whole idea of sharing my data. The fact that if AI have access to this data, Kamala, it's now a part of their training and everybody will have access. So what does that mean is, if I tell the AI that this is how I make a certain product and I use ingredient A, B, and C, it now has that data. So when my competitor uses AI, they will get that information. That's a real risk, right? Because AI uses data and information you share with it. I keep saying him, to do what's called reinforcement learning, essentially learn from the feedback it has given to persons. So the point is that how do you solve that, right, as companies? Well, again, you train your team members not to necessarily use the chat GPTs of the world, but what you do is to have a locally install or install on a cloud server your own AI tool, and GPT, whatever you choose, you can have them use that, which is in your environment. So the point I'm making is that there are privacy concerns and many others, but there are ways to mitigate them. And it's just a matter of training and just get people comfortable with the technology.
So that's on the employee side. Now let's look at the board side. We just have 2 minutes again, but what would you advise for boards? For your board, for instance, what are the kinds of policies are they looking at? What is the information they ask for in terms of data that would help them feel more confident in their accountability role and oversight of this development that's changing as we
Yeah,
speak?
I give you a practical example. Well, first of all, my board is of the view that we should ensure that we get a director on board who is knowledgeable about AI to manage me, the CEO, so I don't get rogue. And so that's the first point, right? So that was literally something my board said that, listen, Ricardo, we need somebody who understands this like you, who can run with you and help us to keep you accountable. So that's the first point. The second point is that there's a new kind of law in Jamaica for Data Protection Act of 2020. And what it requires is each company to have what's called a data protection officer. My board recommended that we employed a data protection officer, for example. And I said to them that we could build an AI agent to be that data protection officer. And one of the things that they requested was as follows. Number one, I need to define it and present it to them. Number two, we need a policy that dictates essentially what this agent will do, what are the processes gaps, and where's the human in the loop. So we still had a data protection officer who kind of monitors that agent to ensure that they do what they ought to do. So it's all about policies and ensuring that we have someone on our staff who can monitor that agent and someone at the board level who can monitor the operations of the organization. Then finally, what they wanted me to do was to ensure that we look at the laws of the Data Protection Act to ensure that as a company within this agentic framework, we're still in compliance with that law, so that essentially while we're doing this in a very efficient way, we're still in compliance with our external partners and laws. So it requires stakeholder engagement, meeting with the folks and ensure that they understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and that they're comfortable with what we've done.
Wow. So that I like that practical example because it tells all of our executives who are present here with us what to expect from boards, what they would be asking for, and our board members to know the depth at which they need to go as well to ensure that you are setting the right tone for that accountability. So last opportunity, anyone in the room who would want to make a comment or ask a question as we bring this opening segment to an end for day 2 of Governance Week? Okay, no hands up. So Ricardo, let me thank you so much. I'm so glad we began the year with you. That presentation that you referred to was when we looked at the whole advances in technology and we looked at cybersecurity issues and concerns. And today you have built on that a whole lot to show us how much the world has progressed in the 6 months from when you presented to us to now. Thank you so much. We will remain connected with you because I think we need your level of guidance as well to ensure that our boards and senior managers are aware of the speed and pace, the many benefits that are there, but also what are some of those risks and how we manage them. Because as we've discussed over the last 2 days, we can't say no. AI is here and we need to use it.
No, absolutely. And Kamala, the one thing I would end with is that one of the things that the board said to me was to ensure that as we're employing these AI agents, to ensure that we inform our staff so they don't get kind of, how do I say this? They don't feel as if we're replacing them with agents. So that transition is very important so that they understand that their role is being made easier through the introduction of these agents not being replaced. And so that is very important to manage employees during this transition. Otherwise, they may go rogue.
I so appreciate that, Ricardo. That was an excellent way for us to end.
Got it.
Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.